The phone buzzed in my hand, its sound sharp and alarming in the quiet of the evening. I didn't recognize the number at first, but the message that flashed across the screen made my heart stop in its tracks. I don't want to be a part of this family anymore. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the screen. The words hit me like a ton of bricks, sending shockwaves through my body. It was from my son, Liam. My son, the one I had raised with love, the one I had held in my arms and promised to protect from the world's cruelties, the one I thought would never turn his back on me, on us. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing, my heart hammering in my chest. What had happened? Why had he said this? Was this some kind of sick joke? I quickly typed back, my fingers trembling as I tried to make sense of the situation. "Liam, what are you talking about? Please, call me." But there was no reply, not a single word, just a haunting silence. I knew I had to act fast. My gut twisted with dread as I rushed to my car, the engine roaring to life as I sped through the streets, my mind clouded with 1,000 thoughts. Was he hurt? Did something happen? What could have caused him to say something so final, so desperate? The drive felt endless, as if time itself was dragging on, stretching each moment into a painful eternity. When I arrived at his apartment, I didn't even bother with the doorbell. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with the key he had given me years ago, the key to his sanctuary, the place I thought was always a haven for him. I swung the door open, heart pounding. The apartment was eerily quiet. His jacket was thrown over the couch, his shoes haphazardly discarded on the floor. But Liam was nowhere to be found. I felt a chill run down my spine. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. My feet carried me through the apartment, each room more unsettling than the last. His bedroom door was slightly ajar, and I pushed it open with a creak, my breath catching in my throat. And there he was. Liam was sitting on the edge of his bed, his head buried in his hands, his shoulders trembling. He was crying. The sight of him, my strong, independent son, reduced to a broken shell, sent a wave of guilt and fear crashing over me. I had never seen him like this before. Never. It was as if the foundation of everything I knew about him was crumbling before my eyes. "Liam," I whispered, my voice barely audible as I took a cautious step toward him. He didn't look up at first. I could hear his shaky breath, the sound of someone desperately trying to hold it together. "Liam, talk to me. Please. What's going on?" His head snapped up, and when his eyes met mine, I was struck by the raw pain in them. There was something in his gaze, something I had never seen before. It was as if the life had been drained from him. I don't know what to do anymore," he choked out, his voice breaking. I can't be part of this family, not anymore." I felt my world tilt, the air thick with the weight of his words. My heart pounded in my chest as I took another step closer. "What are you talking about? What happened?" Liam stood up suddenly, as if the walls of the room were closing in on him. His hands balled into fists at his sides, and I could see the tremors running through him. "You don't get it," he spat, his voice sharp with frustration. "You've never gotten it. You've always been so busy with your perfect little life, with Dad and his career, that you never saw how much I was drowning." "Drowning?" I repeated, my mind spinning. "Liam, what are you talking about?" He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "You think everything's fine because you put on a smile for the world. But behind that smile, everything's falling apart." "I've been falling apart." I took a step forward, reaching out to touch his arm, but he pulled away sharply. "Liam, please," I pleaded, my voice cracking with emotion. "Whatever it is, we can fix it. We can work through it together." But Liam wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking past me, staring into the empty space of the room, as though there was something lurking there, something he was too afraid to confront. "I can't fix it," he whispered. "Not anymore." I felt the ground beneath me shift as his words hit me with the force of a tidal wave. This wasn't just about a fight. This wasn't about a disagreement or a bad day. This was something deeper, something that had been festering for far too long, and I had no idea what it was. I stepped back, feeling a rush of cold air hit my face as the door to Liam's past swung open. What had I missed? What had I failed to see? And just as the silence settled in, something clicked in my mind, something that filled me with a sudden, gut-wrenching dread. What if this wasn't just about him? What if it was about something I didn't even know was happening? "Tell me what's going on, Liam," I said, my voice desperate. "Please." He looked at me then, his eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and anger. "I'll show you, but you won't like it." And that's when I knew. The truth was about to shatter everything I thought I knew. Liam stood motionless for a moment, his eyes avoiding mine as if they could no longer bear to look at me. His posture was defensive, as though he had built walls around himself, walls I had never seen before. It was as though everything that had ever been between us, the bond we shared, the trust we built over the years, had suddenly dissolved into the air. I felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness wash over me. I had always thought that no matter what happened, my son and I would face it together. But this felt different. He was slipping through my fingers, and I wasn't sure I even knew how to reach him anymore. "Tell me what's going on, Liam," I said again, my voice barely a whisper, choked with emotion. "Please, you're scaring me." Liam didn't respond immediately. Instead, he paced back and forth, his fists clenched at his sides, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. He was unraveling, piece by piece, right before my eyes, and I was powerless to stop it. "Mom," he said finally, his voice strained. "Do you remember the night of the party? The one we all went to a few weeks ago? The one Dad was so proud of?" I nodded slowly, trying to piece the fragments of memory together. It had been a gala, one of those fancy events that our family seemed to be invited to every year. Dad had been talking business the entire time, smiling and shaking hands with other high-profile guests. I had been there, of course, trying to blend into the background as usual. But Liam had been there too. I remember him looking uncomfortable, pulling at his collar, standing in the corner alone. He hadn't seemed like himself that night. He had barely spoken to anyone, his eyes darting nervously around the room, avoiding the gaze of certain people. But I hadn't thought much of it at the time. "Yeah, I remember," I said softly, my voice tinged with uncertainty. "What about it?" Liam's face twisted with anger as he stopped pacing and faced me, his hands trembling. "You don't get it, Mom. That night, I met someone who told me things that changed everything." I stared at him, confused. "What are you talking about? Who did you meet?" Liam swallowed hard, his chest rising and falling with each breath. He shook his head, as though he couldn't find the words. I took a cautious step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who, Liam?" I pressed. "What happened?" He finally looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and frustration. "Her name's Erica. She's been friends with Dad for years. She's his assistant." Or something like that. My breath caught in my throat. Erica. I knew her. She was a young woman who had worked with Dad for some time, always present at his meetings, always hovering around the edges of his professional life. She had a way of commanding attention, always looking polished, always so composed. But I never paid much attention to her. I never thought she would be important. "Why does she matter?" I asked, my voice tight with worry. "What does she have to do with this?" Liam's lips quivered as he spoke, the words barely escaping him. She told me things about Dad. Things I never knew. About his secrets. About the things he's been hiding. She said it was only a matter of time before I found out. I felt my stomach drop. The ground beneath me seemed to vanish, and I reached out to steady myself against the doorframe. "What kind of things?" I whispered, my heart sinking. Liam looked away, his face a mask of agony. Dad's been lying to you, Mom. He's been lying to all of us. About everything. About me, about you, about his business, about Erica. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? What are you saying? Liam's voice grew quieter, almost as if he were speaking to himself. She said Dad's been having an affair with her for months. He's been stringing you along, pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. He's been living this double life. I could hardly process the words he was saying. My mind was spinning, trying to latch onto anything that made sense, but nothing did. Everything I had believed to be true, everything I thought I knew about my family, was suddenly crumbling before me. But I don't understand, I said, my voice shaking. Why didn't you tell me this before? Why are you telling me now? Liam's eyes were filled with sorrow, and his voice cracked as he spoke. Because I didn't know how. I didn't want to believe it. I kept trying to deny it. But then I saw something. Something I can't ignore anymore. I felt a cold chill run through me, as if the temperature in the room had dropped several degrees. What did you see? Liam hesitated, as though the next words would burn his tongue. I saw them together. In a hotel room, Mom. I saw Dad and Erica. I saw them kissing. And that's when I knew. Everything I thought I knew about our family was a lie. I staggered back, the weight of his words crashing down on me like a tidal wave. I could hardly breathe. My chest felt tight, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. I wanted to scream, to shout, to deny it all. But the look on Liam's face, the look of raw pain, the weight of everything he had just unloaded, told me that he wasn't lying. This was real. I took a deep breath, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of it all. I had to do something. I had to fix this, but I didn't know where to start. Liam turned away from me, his back to the room. I don't want to be a part of this family anymore, Mom. I can't live in a lie. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt tears prick at my eyes, but I forced them back. I couldn't break down now. Not when I still had a chance to make things right. But I didn't know how to fix it. Not when everything was already broken. I stood frozen, unable to move, as Liam's words echoed in my mind. His confession hit harder than any physical blow could have. My body felt numb, as though I were caught in some cruel nightmare, unable to wake up. The very foundation of my world was cracking, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Liam's back was still turned to me, his shoulders hunched as if the weight of his revelation was too much for him to carry. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, each beat a painful reminder of how fragile everything had been, how much I had taken for granted. Liam, I said, my voice hoarse, struggling to find its way through the lump in my throat. We can figure this out. We can talk to your father. We can work through this together. But he shook his head, the movement slow and deliberate, as though he had already made up his mind. No, Mom. You don't get it. This isn't something we can just fix with a conversation. It's not that simple. I felt a desperate surge of anger and frustration rising within me. This wasn't my son, the boy I had raised to believe in family, to trust in the strength of our bond. Where had that child gone? Why was he so consumed by this lie that he had uncovered? I do get it. I snapped, my voice rising before I could stop it. You think I don't feel betrayed, too? You think I don't know what it's like to be lied to? But we're family, Liam. We don't just walk away from each other. He turned around then, and when I saw the look in his eyes, I felt my heart shatter all over again. His face was pale, his eyes red from the tears he had been holding back. But there was something else in his gaze. Something hard. Something final. You don't get it, Liam repeated, his voice quieter now but filled with an edge I hadn't heard before. You don't understand what it's like to have the person you trust the most betray you like this, and that's why I can't be part of this family anymore. His words cut through me like a blade. The room seemed to close in on me, the walls pressing in, suffocating me with the weight of everything I had just learned. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I had always been the one to fix things, the one to put the pieces back together when they broke. But this was different. This was beyond me. Liam stepped away from me, moving toward the window. The city lights outside flickered like 1,000 distant stars, but all I could see was the vast emptiness that had opened up between us. He stood there, gazing out into the night, his body tense, his face unreadable. I took a hesitant step toward him, my hands shaking as I tried to reach him. "Please, Liam, don't do this. You're my son. I've always been here for you, and I always will be. We can figure this out. Together." But Liam didn't move. He didn't even acknowledge me. I could feel the distance growing, like an invisible wall rising between us, and with it, the realization that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't fix this. "I can't trust anyone anymore, Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not you. Not Dad. No one." I recoiled, the words hitting me harder than I could have imagined. "Liam, you're wrong," I whispered, barely able to speak the words. "You can trust me." "You've always been able to trust me." He shook his head again, his hands balled into fists at his sides. "You don't understand, Mom. I saw them. I saw the way she looked at him, the way he looked at her. It wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just some moment of weakness. It was real, and I can't just act like it doesn't matter." I could hear the pain in his voice, the depth of the wound he had been carrying for so long. But there was something else there, too, something that twisted in my chest. Resentment. Anger. It was as if Liam had been holding on to this for too long, waiting for the moment when the truth would come crashing down on us all. "I can't just forget it," he continued, his voice trembling now, but with a force that couldn't be ignored. "You think I don't know what it feels like to watch you and Dad pretend everything's fine when it's not? You've been lying to me too, Mom. Pretending like nothing's wrong, pretending like we're this perfect family, but it's all a lie. And I can't live in that lie anymore." I felt a hot surge of tears rising in my eyes, but I quickly wiped them away, unwilling to show him how deeply his words were cutting into me. "You think I don't know how hard this has been on you? You think I've just been sitting here, oblivious to everything you've been going through?" My voice broke on the last word, and I took a deep breath to steady myself. "You're wrong, Liam. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. But I never wanted you to feel like this." Liam's eyes flickered toward me, and for a fleeting moment I thought I saw a flicker of the boy I once knew, vulnerable, afraid, searching for some kind of solace. But then it was gone, replaced by the hard, unyielding mask he had been wearing ever since that night. "I don't want your apologies, Mom," he said, his voice cold, distant. "I want out. I want to be free from this. Free from everything." The finality in his words hit me like a punch to the gut. There was no going back now. I had failed. I had failed him in a way I could never undo. And as Liam turned his back to me again, walking toward the door of his apartment, I felt a cold emptiness settle over me. The person I had raised, the person I thought I knew, was slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop him. "Liam," I whispered, my voice barely audible, "please don't leave." But he didn't stop. He didn't even look back. The door clicked shut behind Liam with an eerie finality. The sound seemed to echo through the empty apartment, vibrating in my chest. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my heart heavy with a mix of grief, confusion, and guilt. My son was gone. I had tried, with every ounce of strength I had, to hold on to him, to make him understand that we were still a family. But in that moment, I realized that the chasm between us was too wide to cross. I stumbled back toward the couch, collapsing onto it, my hands shaking as I tried to piece together the shattered fragments of my world. The weight of Liam's words, his anger, his pain, clung to me, suffocating me with the truth I wasn't ready to face. For so long, I had been living in a bubble, convinced that we were invincible, that our family was untouchable. But now, all the illusions I had so carefully constructed were falling apart, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath, but all I could hear were the echoes of Liam's voice in my head. I can't live in a lie anymore. I was drowning in that lie, suffocating under the weight of it, and I had no idea how to swim to the surface. Minutes passed, or maybe hours, I couldn't tell. Time seemed to stretch and warp in the silence that hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I knew I had to confront what Liam had told me. There was no escaping it, no pretending it wasn't true. But every part of me wanted to run away from the truth, to avoid facing the reality that everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, my hands trembling as I unlocked it. I had to talk to John, my husband. I had to know what he had done, what had been going on behind my back. I needed to understand how our family had reached this breaking point. The phone rang once, twice. And then, on the third ring, John picked up. His voice, when it came through the line, was calm. Almost too calm. "Hey, babe. What's up?" he asked, as if everything was normal, as if nothing had changed. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, hot and fierce. How could he act like everything was fine? How could he not know that the ground beneath us had already started to crack? "John, we need to talk," I said, my voice cold and sharp. Now, there was a pause on the other end of the line, a moment of hesitation before he finally spoke again. "Is everything okay? Why do you sound like that?" "Everything's not okay," I said, my voice shaking. "Liam knows. He knows about you and Erica." There was a long silence. I could hear the faint rustle of papers on the other end of the line, but John didn't speak. The quiet stretched on, and I could feel my pulse quicken, my heart pounding as the weight of my words settled in. Finally, he spoke. How did he find out? I could feel my body go cold at his response. "Does it matter how? The fact is, he knows. He saw you with her. He saw you two together." The line was silent again, and for a moment I thought he wasn't going to say anything. But then, his voice came through, low and strained. "I'm sorry, I never wanted it to happen this way. But don't," I interrupted, my voice rising with a mix of anger and disbelief. "Don't you dare try to explain this away. I've been living with your lies, your secrets, for how long? I had no idea that everything was falling apart, that you were betraying me, that you were destroying our family from the inside out." John didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, almost resigned. "I didn't mean to hurt you, and I'm sorry that I've hurt Liam too. But I can't pretend anymore. I can't pretend like everything's fine when it's not. I didn't know how to get out of it, out of this mess. Get out of it?" I repeated, my voice incredulous. "You're talking about an affair, John. A betrayal. How are we supposed to fix this? How am I supposed to fix this?" "I don't know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for it to go this far, but I don't know how to make it right." I closed my eyes, my hands trembling, as I tried to contain the flood of emotions threatening to spill over. I had always believed that John and I could weather any storm, that we could face any challenge together. But now it felt like the storm had torn us apart, and there was nothing left to salvage. "I need space," I said finally, my voice breaking. "I need to think. I can't do this right now." There was a long pause, and then John's voice came through again, softer this time. "I understand. Take all the time you need. But please, don't give up on us. I don't know if I can't anymore," I said quietly before hanging up. The silence that followed was deafening. I dropped my phone onto the couch beside me, my hands falling into my lap. I felt hollow inside, as if all the life had been drained from me in an instant. My family, the life I had worked so hard to build, was falling apart, and I didn't know how to stop it. Liam was gone. John had betrayed me. Everything was slipping through my fingers, and I had no idea how to fix it. I looked around the apartment, the once familiar surroundings now feeling alien. The pictures on the walls, the couch we had shared countless conversations on, everything felt like a distant memory. It was as if the world I had known had shattered, and I was left standing in the wreckage, trying to make sense of the pieces. I couldn't go on like this. I couldn't pretend like everything was fine. But I also couldn't let go of my family, not without a fight. But what did I fight for? The pieces of the family I had once known were scattered, and I didn't know how to put them back together. The night seemed to drag on forever, the silence in the apartment suffocating me with every passing minute. I sat on the couch, staring at the empty space around me, trying to gather my thoughts, but they were all scattered, fragmented, like broken glass. Each piece of the truth, about Liam, about John, about Erica, cut into me, and I couldn't stop the bleeding. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of unanswered questions and shattered trust. I had spent years building this family, nurturing it, protecting it. But now, all I could see were the cracks in the foundation, the lies that had been whispered in the dark, the secrets that had been kept from me. The idea of my family, my entire world, falling apart was too much to bear. But I couldn't just sit there paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. I had to confront the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Liam had already walked away, but I wasn't going to let John get away with this. I had to face him. I had to make him see the damage he had done, the life he had destroyed. I stood up from the couch, the weight of my decision pressing heavily on my chest. I didn't know where I was going or how I was going to handle this, but I couldn't wait any longer. The lies had gone on long enough. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, but just as my hand reached the doorknob, I froze. My thoughts were spinning, my emotions raging, but deep down, a small part of me, the part that still held on to the remnants of hope, wondered if there was any way to fix this. Could I really forgive John? Could I somehow salvage what was left of our family? But the truth was undeniable. The lies had been too deep, too hurtful. The man I had married, the man I had trusted with everything, had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. And my son, who had always been my world, was slipping through my fingers, caught in the mess his father had created. I shook my head, as if trying to clear the fog in my mind. No, there was no fixing this. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. I left the apartment and drove to John's office. I needed to see him face to face. I needed to hear him admit the truth, to understand the full extent of his betrayal. The drive felt like an eternity, each minute stretching into an hour as I battled with the emotions surging through me. Anger, hurt, fear. When I arrived, I saw his car parked in the lot, the lights of the office building glowing through the windows. He was still here, still trying to pretend that everything was fine, still hiding from the consequences of his actions. I marched into the building with a sense of purpose, the sound of my heels echoing down the empty hallways as I approached his office. The door was closed, but I didn't knock. I didn't give him the chance to hide behind excuses or half-truths. I swung it open, my heart pounding as I stepped into the room. John looked up from his desk, his face a mixture of surprise and resignation. He knew this confrontation was inevitable, but that didn't make it any easier. "Mary," he said quietly, his voice low, almost apologetic. "What are you doing here?" I stood in the doorway, my eyes locked on his, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. "You need to tell me the truth, John," I said, my voice steady but laced with emotion. "All of it. I want to know everything. No more lies, no more half-truths." John stood up from his desk, his expression shifting to one of guilt and shame. He ran a hand through his hair, avoiding my gaze. "Mary, I never wanted to hurt you. You have to understand that." I felt a flash of fury. "Understand? You think I need to understand why you've been lying to me? Why you've been sneaking around behind my back with Erica? Why our son had to find out everything the hard way?" John flinched at my words, his face pale as the reality of what he had done sank in. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't want to hurt you or Liam, but I got caught up in it. I didn't know how to stop it once it had started." "Caught up in it?" I repeated, incredulous. "You think you got caught up in an affair? You think that's an excuse for betraying everything we built? For lying to our son? For tearing this family apart?" I could feel my pulse racing, my hands trembling as I struggled to keep my composure. Every part of me wanted to scream, to lash out, but I couldn't afford to lose control, not now. "Mary, I'm so sorry," John said, his voice shaky, his eyes finally meeting mine. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I never meant to hurt you. But the truth is, I've been unhappy for a long time, and I didn't know how to fix it." "Unhappy?" I scoffed. "Unhappy doesn't give you the right to betray your wife and your son. It doesn't give you the right to tear apart the life we've built. You took everything for granted, John. You took me for granted." He opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off. "No, I don't want to hear any more excuses. I don't want to hear that you were unhappy or that it was some mistake. The truth is, you've been lying to me for months, and I can't look at you the same way anymore." John's face softened, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of the man I once loved, the man I thought I knew. But it was fleeting, gone as quickly as it had appeared. "I'm sorry, Mary. I know I can't undo what I've done, but please, please, don't give up on me. On us." But I knew, deep down, that it was already too late. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted, was no longer the same. The damage was done, and there was no going back. "I don't know if I can forgive you, John," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again." With those words I turned and walked out of his office, leaving the life I had known and the man I had loved behind. I walked out of John's office, my footsteps echoing in the quiet hallway, my heart heavy with the weight of everything that had just happened. The confrontation had been inevitable, but no amount of words, no matter how raw or sincere, could undo the damage. John had tried to apologize, tried to explain himself, but nothing he said could repair what had been broken between us. The pain, the betrayal, it was too much. And even though part of me wanted to believe him, to hold on to the idea that we could fix things, the other part of me knew it was too late. The lies had piled up too high. The trust had been shattered beyond repair. I couldn't go back. Not after everything that had come to light. I stepped into the cool night air, the city lights flickering like distant stars, but none of them could illuminate the path I was about to walk. I had no idea what the future held. No idea how I was supposed to rebuild my life after everything had crumbled. As I walked to my car, the weight of the world pressing down on me, I thought about Liam. I hadn't seen him since that night, since he'd told me he didn't want to be part of this family anymore. He had been right, in a way. Everything he had said, every word of pain and frustration, had been justified. I had failed him. I had failed to protect him from the very man who was supposed to be his father. And now, I didn't know how to fix it. I had tried to reach out to him, to understand his pain, but the gap between us seemed too wide, too deep. How could I make him see that despite everything, I was still his mother, that I still loved him? I didn't know. I didn't know anything anymore. The drive home felt like another eternity. My mind raced, and my heart ached, but I couldn't find any answers. All I could do was move forward, one step at a time, and hope that somehow I would find a way to make sense of this mess. When I arrived at the apartment, it was dark, and the silence was deafening. I walked inside, the emptiness of the place pressing down on me. There was no one here. No one to share this pain with, no one to comfort me. I walked to Liam's room, the door slightly ajar, and pushed it open. The bed was neatly made, his things were in their usual places, but it felt hollow, like a piece of him was missing. I sat down on the bed, my hands folded in my lap, and closed my eyes. For the first time in a long time, I let the tears fall. They came in waves, uncontrollable, like a dam that had finally burst after years of being held back. I cried for everything I had lost, for the family I had once known, for the love that had slipped through my fingers, for the son I had failed. But most of all, I cried for myself, for the woman I had become, for the life I had built, and for the choices I had made that had led me here. But as the tears fell, something shifted within me. There was a small, quiet voice deep inside that whispered, "You can start over." It wasn't much, but it was enough to give me a flicker of hope. I didn't know what the future held or if I could ever heal the wounds that had been inflicted. But one thing was certain. I couldn't keep living in the past, trapped by the lies and the hurt. I had to move forward, for myself, for Liam, and maybe, just maybe, for the possibility of finding peace again. I wiped my eyes and stood up, taking a deep breath. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know how to fix everything. But I knew that I couldn't give up on myself, on my son, on the possibility of a future that could be better than this broken past. And with that, I made my decision. I would fight for my family, not the one I had lost, but the one I could still save. I would fight for my son, for our future, even if it meant letting go of the past.